So those of you who just joined, as we do the magic of reminiscing, I'm going to be putting some objects up on the screen in just a minute, and I'll be asking you to put in the chat what that object is. Okay. There's our objectives for those of you that are going to be getting your CEU. And let's just start with this one. Whenever you see that, somebody put in the chat, you can unmute if you'd like. With this many people, it's probably going to be easier to put in the chat. What is it? And if there's something that it makes you think of. Sewing patterns. Yes, it is a sewing pattern. Lots of times when we put that up, people will tell me that it makes them think of something like, and when we're doing this in person, we can really do lots of interaction. Being in FHA, Future Homemakers of America, or being in home ec, or being with a parent or a grandparent who taught them to sew. And I want you to think about those sewing patterns if you know what a sewing pattern is. I know some of you are very young and have no idea what we're looking at here. If you remember that paper that we pulled out and it was like tissue paper, or cutting or getting down on the floor and having to measure that out. So what we're looking for as we look at these pictures are sensory memories. As I show you the next few, I want you to try to think of memories that have to do with your sense of feel, smell, taste, hearing. Okay, here comes the next one. Okay, we know what that is, but any idea on the year that this might be, or even the decade? What are we looking at here? Somebody said the Pong video game, 1964. It is the 1960s. This is a 1960s television. Yes, it was 1960s television. And you notice the knobs on there. Many of us remember that we were the remote control. There was no such thing as a remote control. We got to stand up there with our parents telling us, next, change it. Of course, there were only about 4 channels. We only had 4 channels. There was no such thing of the 300 channels back then, and we were happy with our 4 channels. Or maybe you had an antenna. You may have had an antenna. Let's look at the next one. Sensory memory that comes with that. You can put it in the chat. What does that make you think of? It is the rotary phone. Exactly right. It's a rotary phone that wasn't push button. There's certainly no antenna. It is not cordless. Some people's talking about that long cord that we used to stretch. Somebody even put on here about the party line where you had to pick it up and listen before you speak. 1960s. There's somebody with 1960s. I know in my house in the 70s, we had one that hung on the wall with that long cord. Someone said it was heavy. That is the, oh, and the ring. Yeah, the bell ringer. Okay, let's look at the next one real quick. And what do you see there? You can see some writing. Look, Dick, see Sally and Tim. Funny Sally, funny Tim. Early readers. Yes, those were books. Dick and Jane, Dick, Jane, and Sally. I read that in elementary school, but that's what the readers were like whenever we were young. And it may have been one of yours or somebody else's first book. Let's go to the next, because we're going to do several of these as we get started. So what is that? You look at this picture I just put up and put in the chat. What are we looking at here? Ideas. Transistor radio. That's right. It is a transistor radio. And for those of you, again, who may be a little bit too young, remember, this is a radio that we could carry with us, but it was very small. Now it was about the size of this cell phone. So, but that was a little radio. And you see it had the little handle there that you could take with it. Transistor radio. That's what they were called. And let's look at the next one. Oh, so let's go here. Who is that? They both have a name, by the way. Sometimes people can get one, but not the other. It is Howdy Doody. And who is Howdy Doody's friend there? Let's see if anybody knows. Howdy Doody and who? The guy's name is Buffalo Bob. Cowboy Bob. Somebody put Cowboy Bob. Buffalo Bob and Howdy Doody. That's right. And he had a TV show. What about this? You actually can still buy these. I saw them in the Dollar Tree. But what is this? Or what does it make you think of? Again, we're looking for sensory memories. If anybody has a sensory memory, if you'll put that in the chat, it is a rain bonnet or a rain cap. And some of us may remember being forced to put that on by a parent or a grandparent. I had a grandparent, but I want you to think of a sensory memory. Did she carry it in her pocket? Was it in her purse? Covering up the bouffant hairdos? Yeah. Folding it up. They always had them. Let's look at a couple more. What is that? This is really fun when I have a lot of young people. That is an ashtray. Yes, it is not a candy dish. That is an ashtray because so many of us grew up in houses where lots of people smoked. And some of us, yes, the glass ashtray, you're exactly right. One of my chores at home was to clean those things. Somebody put, I could smell my dad smoking. And those of us who grew up in the house with a smoker who had these ashtrays, you may even remember having to dump the ashtrays or to wash it or the smell. I can feel it. I can feel it on my hands washing those ashtrays. That's a sensory memory that stays with you. Okay, let me do the last one on this set. And what is that? See if someone can tell us what we're looking at there. Lower right. It is a slide projector. Yes, that is a slide projector. Memories with slide projectors. Let me see if somebody can have some of the same memories I do of slide projectors. Use all of your senses, watching travel, slides, the clicking noise. Teachers use these, click, click, click. And did anybody ever like put your hand over the top of it? They got hot. The smell of dust, that's great. You can hear this, you can see it. For some of us, you might can smell it, and you can even feel this. So we're using all of our senses as we look at these pictures. We're going to do one more set. And what is this great safety device? This was a car seat. Yes, this was a car seat. Not sure that that would pass any of our rules or regulations now. That was more like a carrier seat, but that was considered a baby's car seat. All right, let's go to the next one. And what is this? And some of you may have had these or seen them in a different way, but I just happened to find this one. And these are called paper dolls. Yeah, those are paper dolls. And this person, they bought this paper doll, but I bet some of you remember cutting out paper dolls. I had a great grandmother that taught me how to cut out paper dolls, or being able to pull and have the little set of paper dolls. Childhood days and patience, yes. Okay, let's look at this one. And what is this? It kind of tells you what it is on there. But if anybody has any type of a sensory memory from this picture that just came up in the lower left. Makes me think of my granddad. Yes. The 1940s men's hats. Somebody put my dad, James Cagney. Different memories. Again, we're looking for sensory memories as new people are coming on. We're looking at some pictures and we're coming up with sensory memories that these make us think of. Yes, you can still buy these. Absolutely, you can still buy these. And what's this? You can still buy these too. But the kids today think that these are new. These are not new. These have been around for a while. These have been around for a long time. They're knee-high socks, but they're knee-high toe socks, exactly. And these are the fun knee-high toe socks that are rainbow. So anybody, you might have a memory. I can remember wearing flip-flops and knee-high toe socks. I was about 7 in the 80s. So, but you can still buy these. All things good. Back again. And there's one more on this page for us to look at. What in the world? Again, some young people always will look and say, I don't have any idea what this is. Kellen, I'm going to have to get with you later and you tell me how many of these you knew. That's funny. What is this? It's a library card. Yes, this is how you checked out your books at the library. And you can see this one I found. Look up there, some of those dates, 1934, 1940, all the way down to 1962, when it was probably taken out of circulation. Think of that card. If you had that card right there in front of you, some of you could smell it. I can know what that card smells like. The books from the library, the old books, when we'd open them up. You might can also hear the stamp. If it was the stamp, you can see where some of the ink has even run there. So we have been looking at sensory memories. We've been having some sensory memories and what has happened to you during that time. And please answer some of these questions in the chat. We've looked at 3 sets of, all we were doing was looking at pictures, but we were talking about our sensory memories. How did it make you feel? Are you feeling any different than you were just 10 minutes ago? Because we've been looking at pictures for about 10 minutes. What made it change? By looking at any of those items, did it make you think of people? I know some of you it did, because you said my grandma's rain bonnet, my granddad's hat, my dad's, the smell of my dad smoking. Places, think about the places that you had that ashtray. Times or special moments. And hopefully you noticed as we were talking through it that you were using all of your senses. You were using sensory memories, which means that all parts of your brain was stimulated. So being transported to another time, I'm looking at the chat, taking me back to my childhood. This is what I miss, having 2 computers. I'm looking through here. Makes you feel old. That was not the purpose, to make us feel old. Wise makes us, we're wise. Now we all have normal 3-pound brains, but we're going to talk about how we can use reminiscence with people with dementia, with their brains being a 2-pound brain or even a 1-pound brain. Because for the last 10 minutes, hopefully you haven't been producing any cortisol. Hopefully we've tapped in, and you may have even dumped some dopamine or some serotonin. Feel good. And that we can ride that feeling for a while. And if we can do it, our loved ones who have dementia or our residents who have dementia can do it too. Let's look at some of the, and there's been a lot of study about reminiscence therapy. It's what it's called. Because what we talk about with memory care so often is continuing to make connections. This morning here at the conference, while I was talking about grief, and I'm talking to this room full of healthcare providers, I said, we have to come in alongside these families. We become the caregivers, and we help those families get back to making connections. We're going to talk today about how to do some do-it-yourself memory boxes. And some places even have memory boxes. We have some at the West Center. But look at some of this, the power of reminiscence, allowing us to make a connection. Emotionally, we bond with people over memories. Because some of us sitting on this today, as we looked back at the sewing pattern, we could sit there and have a conversation over the sewing pattern, or over that parent or that grandparent or that teacher who taught us how to sew. It's going back and tapping into memories that even we thought we had forgotten. Now imagine if we can go back, and we might not tap into, because we're not going to use the word remember. That's a word we don't use with people with dementia. But if we can tap back into something that's still there, that brings back a pleasant memory, it makes us have those meaningful interactions. And I just mentioned that we just stimulated every part of the brain by looking at those pictures. And we're going to look at some more as we go through the program, giving us that sense of importance and value and belonging and peace. Because imagine if I'm sitting, for those of you who work in communities or a facility, if I'm sitting at a table with people and I've got these reminiscence cards, and you can buy what I just put up there. They're called reminiscence cards. You can go on Amazon and buy them. Sometimes they'll have a different name, but a lot of times they're called reminiscence cards, or you can make your own. And if I am showing, and I'm going to pick on Kellen, who's on here because she's with us at the West Center. If I'm showing something that I know what it is and the residents know what it is, but she doesn't, they're going to love telling her about it. One of my favorite ones that I use is a picture of a white wall tire. And to get some of the men to talking about their cars with white wall tires on it, they love to tell the stories. And one of the things that we want to use very often in memory care is the two words, tell me or show me. Let's look at 5 more. Again, put in the chat what you see and a sensory memory that might come with it. What are those things? This is one that I get asked all the time when I'm with students. Nobody knows what these are. I'm sure some of you know. They are flash cubes or flash bulbs. This is how we used to take pictures. For those of you who are younger, we had to put this flash cube or flash bulb, and it took, those of you who know exactly what this is, how many pictures could we get out of one cube? We could get 4, exactly, because it would turn, and it's very safe. It basically, yeah, I remember being blinded by them because basically it would explode here at your eye. Some of you can probably smell it, or if you touched it, because we all had to do, you touch it, it was hot. Yeah, very, very safe for us to be using. Let's look at the next one. Sensory memory. Anybody have a sensory memory with this? You don't see these very much anymore. Very rare. I actually saw a payphone in an airport not too long ago, but it didn't have the booth. Yeah, this is a telephone booth and it's a payphone. Somebody said, I hear the coins dropping. Oh, and they would smell. The booth would smell. The noise from the coins. Superman, there's a good memory. And let's see if anybody can recall the operator coming on there. Somebody said not having enough money. Yeah, not having enough money to call. The operator coming on and telling you needed to put more money in. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. Now we're getting into some things that some of the younger folks might know, but I want you to look at the condition it's in. What's a sensory memory with that you're looking at maybe? Oh, exercise videos, VHS tapes. Rewinding it. Some of you may have even had a separate rewinder, or you put a pen, a pencil, your finger, something, or you may have even learned how to splice it. Frustration or it being ruined. Absolutely. There's 2 more on here. Okay, here's another one. Not everybody's going to get this one. What are we looking at here? And a sensory memory with it. This is from the drive-in movies. That's exactly right. It's drive-in movie speakers. Those of you who are old enough to remember this kind of drive-in movie speaker, you remember what would happen when it didn't work. And of course, you didn't necessarily know that it didn't work. It would get a staticky noise, and then you got to move your car. For those of you that are younger, you actually would pick that speaker up and you'd hang it inside the window. Somebody said it even broke their car window. Yeah, you had to put it on the car window. Making out with my boyfriend, trying not to drive off with it connected to the car. Yeah, going to the drive-in movie. And let's look at the last one on this page. This is another one. What's that? I've got sensory memories with these things. They are ice trays, ice cube trays, but they're made out of metal. So if anybody can remember either reaching in to get it and you had wet fingers, it would take your fingerprints off. I swear, it pulled the skin off of your fingers when you're trying to open it, and then you had to pull that thing up. Some of you can probably hear it. And I can remember the ice was like shards of glass because of the way that they broke in there. This one is really good, and you can still find these, because lots of times I'll look for stuff like this to keep in a bag to do reminiscence therapy with residents. It's one thing to look at pictures. It's another if you can pull one of these out of a bag and do something like, don't go to a person with dementia and say, what is this? I always make it about me. What in the world is this thing? How does this work? Well, I know how it works, but I'm trying to get them to interact with me. So we develop a connection, and then I'll use those words. Tell me about this. And all the stories that people will share. I want us to talk about this memory bookcase model of how we remember and how we feel. Some of you who've been on our programs before have heard us talk about the difference in the hippocampus and the amygdala in the brain. The hippocampus is the part of the brain in this model that's being represented by the bookcase on the left. And as dementia progresses, that hippocampus dies. It's going away. They lose their facts. They lose the ability to reason or be rational, and they lose logic. There's another part of the brain, though, that's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is represented by the right side of the bookcase that you see here. We're going to watch a short video over this in just a minute. But the amygdala stays intact in people with dementia, which means that their feelings and emotions stay intact. So if we do something with them and they have a good feeling or a good emotion comes from it, and they have the dopamine, the serotonin, they have those good feelings, the good hormones, they'll ride that for hours sometimes. Just like if we have something bad or there's a challenging, we're not using the word behavior, a challenging expression, that can last for hours and hours, even after they don't know why they're mad anymore. So this video does a fantastic job at describing what happens between the hippocampus and the amygdala. So I'd like us to watch this real quick.
I'd like to explain dementia to you in the way that it was explained to me. I'd like to picture that I'm an 80-year-old woman standing here, and that beside me there's a bookcase that's as tall as I am and is filled with books. Now, each of those books represents a fact or a date or a number or a memory that I've gained in the last 80 years of my life. So right at the top, my most recent memories, so what I had for breakfast, getting dressed this morning. The next shelf down might be things that are a little bit less recent. So maybe my last holiday, what I did at Christmas, maybe the last time you came to visit me. The next shelf down by my shoulders will be my 70s, my 60s, my 50s. My 20s will be down by my knees, and my childhood memories will be all the way down by my feet. So that is the bookcase that makes up me. Now, when I get hit by dementia, what's going to happen is that my bookcase is going to start to rock, and I'm going to start losing those books, starting from the ones on the top, which may explain why my short-term memory is likely to be affected first. So, as my dementia progresses, I might find myself having lost not only the top shelf, but the next one down and the next. I might find myself living in the 1950s. Now, embrace my reality. I go into my kitchen today to make myself a cup of tea. What do you think? Given that I'm expecting a 1950s kitchen, what's a likely accident that I might have? You thought putting an electric kettle on a hob, that's absolutely right. Now, as my carer, as my relative, you might be tempted to say, we shouldn't let her make tea anymore, that's really dangerous. But there is a simpler solution, which might be to just change my kettle from an electric one to a whistling kettle, because that's what I'm expecting, and I know how to use that. And I learned how to use a whistling kettle all the way down in my childhood, so that memory is likely to stay with me a lot longer. That's not going to help everybody with dementia, but it might help me at this particular stage. Now, I talked about this one bookcase that's got all these facts and memories and numbers. And that's quite a flimsy bookcase. And when that gets hit by dementia, it rocks a lot. Now, this bookcase is representing a part of my brain called the hippocampus, which is more susceptible to dementia. However, my feelings and my emotions, the things that make me who I am and the reasons why you love me, they're all managed separately by a different part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's all here in a separate bookcase. It's a really strong oak bookcase. When that gets hit by dementia, it's not going to move very much. Let me explain to you how the two bookcases work together. So when I was a child, I had a teacher. He's on the hippocampus bookcase. He was incredibly inspiring. And the way that he made me feel inspired in all, that is self-stored in a separate book on my amygdala bookcase. So the teacher is on the hippocampus, but the way I felt, that's going to be managed by the amygdala. Now let's bring it back to today, where I'm the 80-year-old woman. I have dementia. You come to visit me. So that's a fact. That happens here. And we have a blazing row. I'm probably going to feel upset, sad, angry, and that's going to go onto the amygdala in a book here. You might go away thinking, it doesn't really matter. She'll forget that I even came to visit, let alone that we had a row. And you know what? You're probably right. That book will probably go. But what's likely to stay with me are those feelings, those emotions, that anger, and with nothing to relate it to. It might be really confusing for me. But let me leave you with a positive example. Say you come to visit me and you take me out to the seaside and we have a great time. So here it is, the seaside, the waves, the great time, the feelings of safety and happiness and love that I feel are held over here in the amygdala. As soon as we get back to my house, I've forgotten where we've been. That book is gone. And you might think, oh, it's just not worth it. Why do I bother? I don't think I'm going to carry on visiting her. But look over here. Those feelings, that safety, that warmth, that's going to stay with me for a lot longer. So I would like to encourage you to continue to visit and to care for the people that you know, relatives, friends who have dementia, and to remember that there is more to the person than dementia. Thank you.
I love that video, and we use it a lot because it's so easy to understand. And I want each of us to think about whether it is our loved one we're taking care of or whether we have got an entire community full of people that we are assisting. We don't ever want to do anything that would send them to the point, because a person who has dementia can still go to that fight, flight, freeze. Of course they do. That's when we get those challenging expressions. But if we can do that example she has there at the end, where I might not be able to recall why I'm so happy, but I'm happy, just like I might not be able to recall why I'm so upset, but I'm upset. If we can have these good interactions, and reminiscence really plays into that. And so this particular slide is talking a little bit more about what is reminiscence, some of the research behind it, showing that it is reminiscence therapy and some of the effectiveness of it. Showing that it can relieve depression and it can enhance quality of life, especially if we can do it immediately after there may have been a challenging expression, if we can get in and try to do some type of a reminiscence therapy. Let's go through about 6 more. I tried to just kind of put these throughout so we can keep going back and seeing some things that might remind us of good memories. Again, as I put these up, I want you to think of sensory memory. They still have these, but does anybody have a sensory memory? First of all, what is it? And what's a sensory memory from it, possibly? Animal crackers, and people put the taste, the cookies being small. You may even remember holding them and like I'm gonna bite off the head, or yeah, eating the ears or the tail or whatever one it was. And those little boxes, they used to have the little carry string, so you could carry it around like your little purse with your little animal crackers in there. Childhood memories. What's this? They still have these too. They even kind of still look like this. Anyone have a sensory memory with that? It's a standalone mixer, yes. Making cakes with my mom. They were really big too. Yeah, somebody put heavy baking. They're pretty fancy. Getting a finger caught in the beaters and they lasted forever. That's right. They are still around. Let's look at the next one. What about these? See who remembers these or has a sensory memory. You probably have some sensory memories with these things. You can probably hear them. Yes, they are roller skates and you strap them on and they've got metal wheels. So you may hear the sound. You may remember falling. Somebody put falling on there. Yes, you put your tennis shoes and you strap them on. Yes. Learning how to skate. You may have learned how to skate with those. And what's this? This again is something they still have today, but this is one of the earlier versions of it. Somebody put kindergarten, Tinker Toys. Yes, these are Tinker Toys. I don't know when they first started making Tinker Toys. They've been around for a very, very long time. Yeah, somebody said I still have some of these. I know that they have them in Target. Target has a whole area of like toys from the past. Great place to get some things to, with Reminiscence. Oh boy, what about these? And do you know the name? What were these called? And again, you can still buy things like this, but what were these originally called? They're go-go boots. Yeah, somebody got them. They're go-go boots. And anybody who has a sensory memory with their go-go boots, or maybe a particular outfit that you wore, or what time it was. If you remember the year, if this was when you were in high school or when you graduated, or, oh, somebody put watching Laugh In. Yeah, that's good. Twiggy, tight and uncomfortable, but we had to have them. Doesn't matter if they're uncomfortable. And what about this one? This one sometimes can throw people for a loop. Ah, these boots are made for walking. Yeah. Yes, it is a typewriter eraser. A couple of people got it. That's a typewriter eraser. So you may remember back when we actually used typewriters, and if you had a manual typewriter, you could use these after they even became electric typewriters. That on the end there, that is an eraser. And so we would have to erase it. And then the little brush was to, instead of us, you'll probably remember blowing on it, blow the erasure away. Good memories. Let's talk just a little bit more about reminiscence with those with dementia. Now you see this wall that this person has created, like a reminiscence wall. Whenever I'm doing the program that we do closer to the holidays, I always talk about, you can find these photo frames. Kirkland's is a good place to get them. I found a great one at Kirkland's that actually was a family tree. Excuse me, it looked like a tree. Excuse me. And then you could put, I always encourage people to put labels of who the relation is to the person with dementia. So if I were doing one for my mother, I would say, and it had pictures of her mom and dad, I would put mom and dad. I'm not going to put grandma and grandpa because it's not my tree that I'm putting together. Use their language about who this is. This one happens to be a wall for a veteran. And it is about, you can see some of the other things that they have up there. Excuse me. Some of the benefits that have been found with reminiscence therapy: improving self-worth, reduction in unwanted expressions, behaviors, whole person well-being, and it being able to create happiness and connectiveness. You can imagine a wall like this and somebody being able to tell you their story. Tell me about this. What's going on in this picture? I have a beautiful picture in my office. If I was at my office, I would show it to you. And it was a gentleman who used to be in our day program, and he was in Korea. And he told me the story of when he was in Korea, him longing for a Coke, a Coca-Cola. He wanted a Coca-Cola so bad. And he got leave and he found a Coca-Cola somewhere and somebody took his picture and he's in uniform holding the Coca-Cola, smiling so big. What a story. And he could still tell me that whole story about how that made him feel, captured in a picture. So this is something that you might call a reminiscence box. Ours look a little bit different, but you can put them in a suitcase. I've seen them done like this before. And I want you to look at this first bullet point here and really hear this. Reminiscence is never something that is just for them to do, or even for older people only. It's something we can all enjoy. We can do it in a session to give spouses, partners, sons, daughters, or siblings the opportunity to see the person with dementia in a different light as they remember a song or a dance or tell a story that they hadn't heard before. Because they may connect back to a time that you've never heard the story, or maybe it's one you haven't heard in a long time. We have the opportunity to learn more about each other as people rather than dementia being the focus. I used to run a support group with people earlier in the disease. And of course, I didn't call it the support group because nobody wanted to go to that. I called it Chit Chat with Holly. And I would just come in and would have topics. And one time we started talking about our favorite Christmas gift that we ever received, a favorite Christmas gift. We had laughter, we had tears. It was one of the best talks I had ever had with these folks who most definitely had dementia. But if you'd have walked in while we were having that talk, you'd have never known it. We were just a group of people sitting together and reminiscing about Christmas gifts. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift. Let's look at a few more. Oh, let me back up. Here's that one. What are those? What are they called? And does anybody have a memory? You can actually buy these again. They've come back. Bell bottoms. Yes, 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 bell bottoms. And they're not only bell bottoms, they're high-rise jeans. For a while, they called them mom jeans, and now they're all back again. High-rise bell bottom pants in the 70s. And what's this one? I had a lot of these. Tracks, 8-tracks. This is an 8-track, and you can see there that it's in a car. That's an 8-track player that's in a car. I want you to think of sensory memories with the 8-track. Some of those sensory memories you might have. Oh, there's somebody even had the car, 68 Chevy. We couldn't fast forward it. We couldn't rewind it. You remember, you just had to go to the next channel. It had like 4 channels is what we always called them. And you'd have to go to the next one. There was no fast forward. Oh, it getting stuck in the player. That's a great memory. There is one of those. We were just talking about it. That is a manual typewriter. Yes, you see there's no cords there. You can't plug that thing in. And then look at the little bar that's up on the upper left-hand side. I knew somebody would put that on there when your finger would go down between the keys. There's a sensory memory, having your finger go down between the keys. The bell would ring. Yep. Lots of good memories with those. What about this one? I love it. Oh, somebody talked about I couldn't type in their master's paper and couldn't make a mistake. The banana seat bike. Somebody talked about having the bell, riding down a hill with a friend. Look at the handlebars on that bike too. This is fancy. Did anybody ever get their bell bottoms caught in their chain? I did. I got my bell bottom pants caught in the chain of my bicycle one time. That tells what age group I'm with. And then what's this? Sometimes people have to think about this one. Yes, it's a 45 adapter. That's right. Because we had records, and some of the records were 45s and they had the bigger hole in the middle. So you had to put that adapter in there. We use this with our record players. That's right. 45 adapters. So this, again, you may be hearing music because of the 8-track, or thinking about the records, or going to the disco in your bell-bottom pants. Clothes are amazing if you can find clothes. We've talked about the 5 senses, using sight, sound, smell, taste, touch to engage and connect. Now you can do reminiscence therapy in a small group, or you can do reminiscence therapy one-on-one. It can also be a self-directed activity. If you have some reminiscence cards, or if you make a memory box. This is something that a person with dementia many times will just do on their own. I can remember in our day program just sitting out some of the reminiscence cards, and the folks there starting to go through them and just using them as talking points. You're not asking them to remember. We're not using the word remember. We're not going to go up with a picture or an item and say, do you remember what this is? Because you could create a challenging expression, especially if they don't know what it is. But there's another way you can do it. You just simply say, I was wondering about this. What is this thing? I'm thinking I might, and you may have to give them some hints or clues, like that ice tray. I've used the ice tray several times. What is this thing? It looks like maybe this pulls up somebody in the group will know what it is, and they'll start telling stories, or they will remember their fingers getting stuck to it. Songs, you can also use songs with reminiscence therapy. That's a fantastic thing to do, especially if you're going to do a box, if you create a box of things from the 70s, and if you're playing some 70s music or items from the 60s. Here's some other ideas that you can use. You can use their life story and their histories to build a memory box specific to them, or a memory wall if you're going to put pictures up on a wall. It's used as a tool. It's a time to be comfortable. It is definitely something you want to make time for. It's not something that you want to have your loved one doing and you're over here on the phone. Do this with them. Do this with your residents. You learn so much about them. You're creating a story and you're doing an activity. Let's go through another set. There's that white wall tire that I mentioned earlier. That's the exact picture that I use with folks. And then I will say to them, tell me about a white wall tire. And there's lots of stories about my first car, saving my money for. It's amazing the things that you'll get. Okay, what about this one? This goes with one we did earlier. Yeah, it's a record player. Record players are back in also. I saw them at Target and Half Price Books. Now, lots of people walk around with headphones on, but what are these? It's headphones, but what is it? What are we listening to here? They are radio headphones. Yes, that's why they have the antenna on it. So you put it on, and what you're listening to, because there was no such thing as Bluetooth, we're just listening to the radio, and you could tune in radio stations. This is great. And if you can get pictures of the car that loved ones had, yeah, this one has the fins on it. So many people used to have pictures. We used to take pictures outside, standing on the porch in front of our house, and we would take pictures in front of cars. I think it's because the cameras weren't as good. We need to get outside in the light. But go through old photos and see if you can find pictures of your loved ones standing in front of cars. Talk about the car. And then what do we have here? And put it with a sensory memory. If you can come up with a sensory memory with this, it's the Texas Instruments calculator. And sometimes we needed this particular calculator or one very similar. This wasn't just for your regular old math class. calculus, graphing. Yes. Yep. Somebody even put, it had tiny, tiny little buttons. They were expensive. That has feelings that go with it. So when we do reminiscence therapy, we're not quizzing them. We're not trying to see how many things do they know or not know. That's not what it's about at all. It is all about the connection. We're not going to correct their stories because they may start to confabulate, especially if we have some banter going back and forth. And confabulation is something that people with dementia do. It is very different from telling a lie. A confabulation is when I tell a story to be able to go along with your story, and I firmly believe that it happened. So that is one of those 36 pretty common symptoms of dementia, is to confabulate. But families many times will call it a lie, that they're telling lies. They're confabulating. It's telling a story. Just go with it. Let them tell the story. You might be surprised at how creative they can get. Now, what if one of the things we're looking at brings up a sad feeling? It's okay for people with dementia to have sad feelings. We want to put them in a bubble and we want to wrap them in bubble wrap and keep them safe all the time, but they are still people. And it is okay for us to look at an object and go, oh, that reminds me of my grandma. And I might cry over it. And that's okay. That makes me sad too. That's how you validate a feeling. I can see where that would make you sad. And we go on to the next thing, but we validate the feeling. We acknowledge that they're having the feeling. Now, if they do start becoming frustrated or anxious, then we may want to do this at another time because it just might not be the right time. Our part in doing reminiscence therapy is to listen. Really pay attention and listen, make the connection. Give them time to process. Keep in mind some of the things we've talked about in other programs, that 20 seconds to process. 20 seconds is a long time. For us, 20 seconds is a long time. If I were to pick up this and I'm showing it and go, now what in the world is this thing? I don't see how this works. Tell me about this. And then to wait and have 20 seconds of silence, we're the ones that get uncomfortable, not them. They're okay. They're processing. Remember what's happening to their brain. Again, you can make your own. You can print out pictures. You can laminate pictures or just run them off on like a cardstock. But the main thing is that we're having fun. Do something to have fun. You can use them as conversation starters. And here's some ideas. Would you look at this? Have you ever used one of these before? Tell me about it. This is interesting. Can you tell me how it works? Can you show me how this works? Did you ever use one of these before? What in the world do you think this was used for? I used to play with one of these. Did you ever play with one of these? I did that one time with a Raggedy Ann doll. I brought in a Raggedy Ann. Smell, feel, taste this. It reminds me of such and such. What's it make you think of? And you may be doing that while you're cooking, while you're out in the garden. So active listening is one of those terms that we use. Again, when you're active listening, you don't interrupt. You're not texting on the phone. You're not doing something different. When we're actively listening, we're giving them our attention. We have to accommodate the disease. They can't. And this is one of the ways that we can accommodate it. Don't judge and don't try to understand their thinking necessarily. Let's look at a few more while we're finishing up here. This one may stump you. This one stumps a lot of people. Let's see if we can get what this one is. Anybody know what that is that I just put up on the screen? It's the TV off-air signal. That is exactly right. When the TV used to go off at midnight. Yes, it could be called a test pattern. And some of you may remember they would play the national anthem, the flag would wave, and then this would come on. And some of you may have had a static sound that would come on. I can remember our TV having kind of a staticky sound, but the TV went off. You weren't watching TV at 2 a.m. Yeah, it does look like a dartboard, but that was the like a TV test pattern. Let's look at this next one. What is that? And do you have a sensory memory with that? I got a lot of folks get memories with this one. Really bringing up some sensory. I've had people cry over that picture right there. Called it a dressing table, a vanity, my grandmother's house. Yes. And one of you just wrote, smelling the fragrance, smelling her perfume, smelling her powder. It was at my grandmother's, or it was at my mother's. You'll still see these. They must have really been out there. Someone said furniture polish, brushing my hair in front of the mirror. They were low to the floor. You might even be able to use your memories, because we've got memory maps, and open those drawers and look at them. What would you keep in that top drawer? Tell me about what you put down in the bottom drawer. What a conversation you could have with somebody. Let me get the next one to come up. There it is. And some of you are even going to be able to tell me the city this is from, I bet. First of all, what is it? We got a whole group of people that have probably never seen this ever in their life. I don't think my daughter would even remember anything about what this might be. Can somebody look at that closely? It is movie times. You're exactly right. And somebody got it. That's from Houston. They are from Houston. That is movie times for theaters in Houston. And where would we get this? I think somebody put, it was in the newspaper. Yeah, it was in the newspaper. So if we wanted to know what movies were playing, where and when, we would go to the newspaper. I was doing this program down in the Houston area not too long ago, so that's why I put that in there. And I've lived down there for a very long time, so it is fun to look and go, the Galleria, Westwood Mall. Yeah, I know those places. But that's how we found out. Now, some of you also remember we used to be able to call the movie theater, and they would do the times that were coming. Okay, what's this? Talk about some sensory memories. If you know what this is, you can smell them, you can feel them, you can hear them. Yes, it is for a like a cap gun, a pop cap gun, and it had real gunpowder in it. And some of it, yes, somebody put burnt eggs. We would sit with rocks. My brother and I would sit with rocks and pop them and try to make flames. That's what kind of kids we were. We'd sit outside and do that. Yeah, hitting them with rocks. I'm glad to see we were not the only children doing that. And then what are these? There's usually a lot of sensory memories with these also. Yeah, if you've ever worn these to bed, I just saw someone put, ouch. Exactly right. That is the sensory memory. And you can still buy those. So to have a few of those in a box. And what's interesting with those caps also, you can smell them. You can smell those caps. So to make your own memory box, and we're getting close to the end of time, we've got about 4 minutes, but you could see what you could do. You can give it a theme, like you could make a sports box. You could give it, you could make a car box, you could make a sewing box, you could make a cooking box. And if you're in the Fort Worth area, in many of the Fort Worth libraries, there are memory boxes that you can check out. They are memory boxes that we put together at the West Center, and they're at the Fort Worth libraries, and you can actually go and check out a memory box. You can make them and ours that we made are specific to like a holiday, sports, cooking. They're pretty generic, but if you're making one yourself for your loved one, you can make it really personal. You want to make sure and incorporate all 5 senses. So if you're doing a baseball, for example, you can put in maybe a little bat, a glove, and make sure you smell the leather, a ball, a hat, old baseball cards, have some peanuts in there, or make it a whole day and say, we're going to watch a baseball game, sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. There's all kinds of things that you could do. And let's finish. We are getting close to the end, but I wanted to put a few more of these in here so we can get a few more memories ourselves before we go. And what is this that I have just put up? And do you have a sensory memory with the red wagon? Lots of times we may have a memory of pushing somebody around. I had a baby brother I put in the red wagon, would try to send him down the hill on his way. And what about this? Here's another one that may really bring a memory to some of you. What is that and what does it make you think of? It's a thermos. And some people said thermos jug for soup and grandpa coffee thermos. A lot of people will say coffee. Grandfather's lunch would be inside a coffee thermos, a drink thermos. Yeah. Dad going to work. Yep. And what about these? You can still buy these. Memories with this, what is it? It actually tells you on there what it is, but if anybody has a sensory memory, they are hair ties, and they're really a lot like yarn. They're just little hair ties. I can remember braiding them together. You can use them to decorate your hair. What about these? These are most definitely still out there. I made a memory box and put some of these in there. They're the Army Men toys. They've been around forever. What's fun is, to look at the history of the Army Men toys, and they have been around for a very long time, but we've got a generation of folks who think they came from Toy Story. That was the first place they ever came from. And then what about this one? Who knows what that is and can smell it and feel it? Dippity Doo is a hair gel. That's exactly right. And they do still make Dippity Doo. I have not opened it and stuck my finger down in there like I used to at my grandmother's house. There's our references that we used, and there's our information. We are right at time. I hope you enjoyed. This is a little bit different. It gives you an idea of how to make some memory boxes, and then how to use reminiscence therapy for yourself or for your loved ones. Let's see. For a reminiscence box for someone who no longer speaks or offers much in the way of facial expressions. Absolutely. I would still try to do it. And especially if they can still hold things or smell or taste, even if they have that flat affect, that amygdala is still working, and you don't know what you may be allowing them to have as far as like in the video, what she talked about. I would really try it. Really try it using this, even if there's a flat affect. Thank you so much for being here. We're right at 12:30. You'll get a copy of the video. You will get a copy of the slides and CE information either later today or tomorrow. Like I said, we're out of town right now, but I'm glad you were here today. See y'all soon.